This presentation is about dummy coding so that we can use categorical variables as predictor variables in a regression model. In this case, we're using the Glastonbury Festival regression data set. If you've opened that, you will notice that there's a ticket number that we can completely ignore. There's a music affiliation. The title name of the variable is music. There's day 1, day 2, day 3, which we can ignore. And then there's a change in hygiene. The lower the score in hygiene, the dirtier or smellier you are. Keep in mind that as we go through the analyses and interpret the coefficients at the end. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to include or predict the change in smell or hygiene by the type of musical affiliation. If we look at the variable view, we will see that this is actually coded as musical affiliation, and by clicking on the bubble on the values column, we can see that there are 4 different musical affiliations, actually 3 musical affiliations and 1 value which is no musical affiliation at all. So we need to decide who we want to compare this to. So conceptually it would make sense to say, let's compare those who have a musical affiliation to those who don't have a musical affiliation. So if you look at the PowerPoint slide, the conceptual model for dummy coding is you take those who are no musical affiliation, you assign them a 0, and you compare it to IndieKid separately, where IndieKid receives a 1. You compare it to Metaler, where Metaler receives a 1, everything else is a 0. You compare it to Krusty, where Krusty receives a 1. Krusty is what we're comparing to, everything else that is a 0. What I like to do is just to make sure that I keep everything with me, I like to Control Alt and print screen, open up a Word document, and then paste this so that I can actually have it for easy access. Now, I know what is what. We're going to compare IndieKid to no musical affiliation, Metaler to no musical affiliation, and Krusty to no musical affiliation. I'm going to put this on my second screen here. If you do have one, great. If you don't have one, you might struggle a little bit as you go through the process, but you can follow along after watching the video. So I'm going to cancel out of this, and I'm start with the process of transforming variables. I'm going to record into a different variable. It's always good to recode into a different variable rather than recode into the same variable. Once you alter the original variable, you may be at a point in SPSS where you can't go back, so recode it into a different variable. Click on that. Let's reset this and let's bring in musical affiliation. So I'm going to bring in musical affiliation. I'm going to say, you know what, instead of treating musical affiliation with its 4 levels, Indie, Metaler, Krusty, and no musical affiliation, I'm going to look at these ones individually. So I'm going to go with IndieKid, which is number 1. If we pull this back over here, we can see IndieKid is number 1. And I'm going to compare it to no musical affiliation. So I'm going to go Indie versus no affiliation. And I'm simply going to copy paste this into my label. Change old new variables, and IndieKid is 1. It will remain as 1. Add, and all others are going to be, all other values are going to be 0. And I'm going to add, so else is 0, continue, and OK. So what is happening now is I simply get a prompt in my output window that says, hey, listen, you have recoded a variable. And so if you check on Glastonbury, you will notice that now there is a variable that's called Indie versus no affiliation. Let's go ahead and do the same thing with the other variables. I'm actually clicking out of this. I can actually click out of either one, but recode into different variable. We're going to keep this here. We're simply going to change the name now. So we're going to go Metaler versus no affiliation. I change that label. So now I have music. The variable music, which had 4 levels, is now simply going to be Metaler 1 versus no affiliation 0. So we're going to go old and new values. We can actually remove, and that was an extra step that I did, removing that. So metaler, as we know, is number 2. So value number 2 is now going to be value number 1, add, and all other values are going to be 0. So now metaler is 1 and everything else is 0. Continue. And okay, very good. The same thing happens here. If you want to check, you can check. So now we have metaler versus no affiliation. Now we do the same thing for the next variable. Let's go. Simply transform, recode it to different variables. Music is already there. Let's go ahead and change this now. And this is going to be Krusty, I guess. And I'm not sure what kind of musical affiliation that is, but here we go. Krusty. Maybe it's a band in England that we are not aware of here in America. So we go Krusty there. I change this, old and new values. I can keep else as 0, and I can simply remove this one here. Let's bring in our reference sheet. So Krusty is number 3, so Krusty is going to be 1 now, because we're going to compare Krusty as number 1 against everything else, which is a 0. So let's go 3 is now 1, add, and all else is going to be 0. Continue, and simply click on OK. So now what happens is in recoding or in dummy variable recoding, what happens is if you had 4 levels originally, after you dummy code, you simply have 3, because you're essentially, if you look at this, you're looking at Krusty as a number 1 against everything else, 0. Metaler as number 1 against everything else, 0. Indie Kid as a number 1 and everything else is 0. And you don't compare no affiliation to no affiliation. So no affiliation is simply a 0. So you're only going to have the number of levels that you have minus 1. So let's minimize this here. Let's go back to our analyses. And so the question is, predict whether a musical affiliation had an effect on the change of hygiene of the participants of this 3 or 4 day Glastonbury festival. And let's go ahead and run that. So we're simply going to click on regression, linear, and change in hygiene is our dependent variable, and we want to see if this changes based on the different categories or classifications of musical affiliation. So we're going to bring that in, and we're not going to click on anything here yet. Eventually you will, if you want to check for culinarity issues, and if you want to look for normality, and if you want to look for other assumptions that are important to regression to make sure that the model is valid. Then we're going to click on OK, and our output is this. We have an R coefficient of 0.27. We have an R square of 0.07, which suggests that this model accounts for about 7% of the total variance. Our adjusted R square is maybe just a little bit different from the R square, suggesting goodness of fit may not necessarily be ideal in this model, but we're not going to stress about that. We're going to move on to our ANOVA box, and we're going to determine whether the model is a significant model or not. So we look at the probability value being less than 0.05, and at 0.024, this is smaller than that. And again, because you already know this, the total sum of the squares, the residual sum of the squares, the regression sum of the squares, and then this divided by this gives you this value, this divided by this gives you this value, this divided by this gives you this value. The 3.27 is your F ratio value. You can put this on a F ratio table and calculate, but SPSS does it for us, and it tells us that this F ratio is significant at the 0.05 level. Next thing that we do is we go to our coefficients, which is usually considered the most interesting part of the output once we determine that we have a significant model, and we interpret our coefficients. And so in this case, what we're doing is we're simply saying indie versus no affiliation. Well, we can see that indie is actually negative 0.410, less than no affiliation. Is this significant? Or T tells test, the test that suggests that this value is significant from 0, tells us that yes, this is a significant predictor. And so, because again, this has been, let's not stress about that. We've talked about this before, about just throwing too much information all of a sudden into it. What we do with our coefficients is simply determine whether a coefficient is significant or not, and then we interpret it. In this case, we're not necessarily going to interpret metallar versus no affiliation. We can only say, or we can at best say, let's see if I can get rid of that box right there. Okay, we can say that there is no significant difference between the means of metallar and no musical affiliation. When it comes to crusty versus no affiliation, again, crusty is negative 0.412 compared to the mean of no affiliation. So this is almost 0.5 or half a point less in terms of hygiene for those who enjoy or who are part of the crusty affiliation, musical affiliation. That's how you would interpret your unstandardized coefficients in this case. That's the presentation on that. We can pull this over from the I think it's actually this one here. If you have a chance, conduct the same analyses, right? And see if I can find that. I thought it was in this. I've opened up so many windows that I can't tell anymore what I have open or what I don't. So yeah, let's just go ahead and end this presentation right about here.